The desert was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silent, but the heavy, strange silence that made even the wind feel afraid. The sun was high. The sky was colorless, pale. Nothing moved. No birds, no insects, no clouds. Eli Morgan, a human explorer, dragged his tired feet across the dry, cracked riverbed. His lips were dry. His skin burned under the twin suns. His water bottle had been empty for hours. The sand under his boots was sharp like broken glass, and each step felt like walking through a graveyard. In fact, it was bones. Everywhere. Alien bones, some tall and wide, others small and thin. Rusted weapons. Broken shields. Shattered helmets. This was no ordinary desert. It was a battlefield. Old, forgotten, and cursed. Eli stopped to breathe. His hand trembled as he wiped sweat from his forehead. That's when he saw it, a helmet. Half buried in the dust, glowing faintly unlike any helmet he had ever seen. It was silver with strange carvings on it. Like runes or tribal marks, a crack ran down one side, and inside the helmet, there was water, not much, just a small pool at the bottom. Still, clean-looking, shining under the sun, Eli fell to his knees. Please, just a sip, he whispered. He knew the rules. Explorers were told never to drink water from unknown sources, especially on alien planets. And this place, this dead battlefield, felt wrong, but thirst was stronger than fear. His throat ached. His mind screamed for relief. He looked around, no one. Just the bones of warriors and the broken shadows of a lost war. He lifted the helmet slowly. It was heavier than it looked, as if it still remembered the one who wore it. Eli's fingers brushed across the carvings. For a moment he thought he heard a whisper, a voice deep and low, like wind inside a cave, but he shook it off. Just tired, he muttered. He raised the helmet and drank. The water was cold, shockingly cold, and bitter, like metal and ashes. But it felt good. He drank it all, every drop, then wiped his mouth and sighed in relief. A second later, everything changed. His hands began to shake. His chest tightened. His vision blurred. He dropped the helmet. It hit the sand with a dull thud. Eli gasped and pulled out a small piece of mirror he kept in his belt pouch. One glance and his heart nearly stopped. His face was older. His jawline had sunken slightly. Wrinkles had appeared around his eyes. His hair looked thinner. In seconds he had aged years. No, he whispered, touching his face. A strange hum filled the air. The helmet began to glow brighter. Then from the edge of the dunes a faint figure appeared. Not solid, not alive, a shadow, a memory. It was the warrior. An alien, tall and proud, wearing the same kind of armor the helmet belonged to. The warrior raised one hand and pointed at Eli. Then, in a language he did not understand, the figure spoke. A whisper. A warning. A curse. Eli fell back, crawling away from the helmet. His breathing was fast. His mind raced. What did I do? What did I drink? He cried. The air around him felt heavier. The sun seemed to dim. And on his forehead something started to burn. A symbol, glowing and strange, was now marked on his skin. Eli's heart pounded. He looked again at the helmet. The carvings were moving, shifting, like they were alive. He tried to stand, but the ground tilted beneath him. A voice echoed in the wind. Not human, not machine, ancient. The trial has begun. Eli's heart was pounding. The heat was unbearable. But it wasn't the desert sun that made him sweat. It was the strange symbol now glowing on his forehead. His fingers brushed it as if trying to wipe it away, but it didn't fade. The more he touched it, the more it seemed to pulse like something alive inside his skin. The air around him felt wrong. He could still hear the whisper of the fallen warrior's voice, and the ground beneath him shifted as though it was alive. The shadowy figure, the warrior, was gone, but Eli could still feel its presence, watching him. What's happening to me? Eli muttered, staggering to his feet. He reached for the helmet again, but it was no longer glowing. The water had vanished, leaving only the cracked shell behind. He was about to turn away when a cold wind suddenly swept across the desert, carrying with it the scent of something ancient. Eli froze, his eyes scanning the horizon. The sky had darkened, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Then from the edge of the valley a figure appeared. This time it wasn't a shadow. It was real. The figure was tall, with pale green skin and long silver hair flowing in the wind. She was dressed in ragged robes, the hem torn and dirty. Her face was hidden by a veil, but Eli could feel her eyes on him. "You drank from the helmet," she said. her voice soft but steady. "Now you are marked." Eli stepped back, his pulse quickening. "Who are you?" he demanded. The woman did not answer immediately. She took a slow step forward, the sand swirling beneath her feet. "I am one of the last of the old ones," she said, her voice distant as if speaking from a dream. "You have been chosen for the trial." Eli swallowed hard. "Trial? What trial?" Her gaze never left him. "The trial of humanity. The helmet you drank from belonged to a warrior of the forgotten clans. Those who are chosen must face the reckoning or their time will run out." She paused, watching him carefully. "You are not the first human to come here." Eli's mind raced. "I'm not the first?" She shook her head slowly. "Many have come before you, but none have passed." "Passed?" Eli asked, his voice cracking. "What do you mean?" "The warrior you saw, his name was Lorkai. He was part of the great battle that ended this world, long before your kind ever stepped foot here." She took another step closer. "And now you will face the same path he did. The same path every human has failed to survive." Eli's heart dropped. He felt a wave of panic rise in his chest. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't mean to drink from that helmet." The woman did not seem to care about his panic. She simply stood there unmoving like a statue. "You didn't choose this, but it chose you. And now there is only one way forward." Eli shook his head, trying to think clearly. He needed to escape. There had to be a way out. He could not stay here, not with his life slipping away, not with this curse hanging over him. "I need to find a way to reverse this," Eli pleaded. The woman's face softened for the first time. "There is no reversal. There is only the reckoning." She turned and began to walk away. "Follow me." Eli hesitated for a moment, but something in her voice told him he had no choice. He had to follow. His legs felt heavy as though they were made of stone. He tried to shake off the feeling, but it was impossible. The desert was closing in on him, suffocating him. With no other choice, Eli followed the woman as she moved through the valley, her steps light and sure. The path was rocky, the ground uneven, but she navigated it with ease. Eli's eyes kept darting around, expecting something, anything, to jump out at him. But there was nothing. Only the eerie silence of the desert. After what felt like hours, they reached a large, ancient stone structure half buried in the sand. It looked like a temple, but unlike any Eli had ever seen. The stones were smooth, worn down by time and weather, but the carvings on the walls were still sharp and clear, depicting images of battles and strange symbols. The woman stopped at the entrance. "This is where the reckoning takes place," she said, her voice quiet. "You must enter. You will be tested." Eli stepped forward, his legs unsteady. "Tested? How?" She gave him one last look, her face unreadable. "Only by the gods of this place can you find out if you are worthy." She turned away, disappearing into the shadows of the temple. Eli stood there for a moment, his heart racing. He had no idea what was waiting inside, but he knew one thing. There was no turning back now. The trial had already begun. With a deep breath, Eli stepped into the temple, the cold stone pressing against his skin. Eli's footsteps echoed in the temple as he moved deeper into the ancient structure. The air inside was cool and thick, carrying the scent of aged stone and forgotten history. His heart raced, not from the desert heat, but from the weight of what he was about to face. The temple walls were covered in intricate carvings. Alien symbols twisted around each other like snakes, telling stories that Eli could only begin to guess at. Strange, glowing patterns pulsed beneath the surface of the stone, lighting the path ahead. He pressed his hand to the cold wall, feeling the vibrations under his fingers. The temple seemed alive, responding to his touch. The whisper from earlier, the voice that had spoken when he drank the water, echoed in his mind again. The trial begins. But what was the trial? And how was he supposed to survive it? His thoughts were interrupted when he reached a massive chamber, its ceiling high above, supported by columns carved with even more alien symbols. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, glowing faintly, with a large stone book resting on top of it. Eli stepped forward, drawn to it as if some unseen force were pulling him closer. As he approached, the book's cover flickered, showing images of battles, gods, and warriors. He felt an inexplicable connection to it, as though the book was calling to him. He reached out and opened the book. Pages filled with ancient scripts and drawings filled his vision. But as he flipped through them, The words began to shift and change, becoming readable to his eyes. "The warriors of the forgotten clans," he read aloud, his voice sounding small in the vast room. "The betrayal of Lorkai," he paused. The name felt familiar. He had heard it from the woman, the one who had led him here. But there was more. The pages flipped faster now, and images of a great battle appeared. A war between two worlds. A warrior, a human warrior, leading a charge. Eli's breath caught in his throat. It was him. Lorkai's face stared back at him from the ancient pages. He was young, strong, and fierce, his eyes burning with a fire Eli could almost feel. Lorkai was human, Eli whispered, his voice trembling. The book seemed to respond, the pages flicking to a new section. Eli read the next passage aloud, his fingers shaking. "The betrayal, the hybrid war. The half-bloods will rise and humanity will follow." He froze. Half-bloods? The words felt like a cold slap against his face. Was he reading about himself? Had his bloodline been part of this ancient war? Eli turned another page, his mind racing, but the images on the pages started to blur. The words twisted, becoming harder to read. His head began to ache. His vision was swimming. The temple walls seemed to close in on him, the whispers growing louder and louder. "The reckoning has begun." The voice from the helmet, the warrior's voice, it was everywhere now. Eli stumbled backward, dropping the book. He fell to his knees, his hands pressed against his temples, trying to block out the endless whispers. Suddenly, the ground beneath him began to shake. The temple groaned, the walls trembling as if they were alive. A low rumble filled the chamber, and the pedestal began to glow brighter. The stone book flew into the air, its pages flipping wildly, as if controlled by some unseen force. Eli scrambled to his feet, his heart hammering in his chest. The room was spinning, the whispers now turning into words he couldn't understand. Panic surged through him. This wasn't just a test. This was a punishment. The walls shifted, and a massive door at the far end of the room slowly creaked open, revealing a dark passageway. But the air around it was thick, as though it was filled with the weight of centuries. The temple was beckoning him forward, urging him to go deeper, to find what lay at the heart of this trial. Eli's feet felt heavy. He didn't want to go. He wanted to leave, to forget the helmet, the strange woman, the glowing mark on his forehead. But he knew he had no choice. The reckoning had already started, and there was no turning back. With a deep breath, Eli stumbled toward the dark passage. As he crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind him, trapping him in the blackness. His heart raced, his breath shallow. He was no longer in control. He was a prisoner of the temple, a prisoner of his fate. The passage was narrow, the walls pressing in around him. Strange markings glowed along the stone, lighting the way forward. He didn't know where the path led, but he knew one thing. He was being watched. The air grew colder as he walked, his every step echoing in the dark silence. As he moved deeper into the passage, the whispers returned, louder than before. But now they weren't just words. They were images, flashes of memories, battles, and faces. Faces he recognized. He saw Lorkai's face again, but now it was older, weathered. He saw the warrior in battle, his eyes filled with rage. And then he saw his own face standing beside Lorkai. He was part of this story. "The trial has begun," the whispers said again, their voices merging into one. Eli stumbled forward, the weight of the truth crushing him. He had to survive this. He had to face whatever came next. His past was no longer just his own. It was intertwined with the ancient war, the hybrid bloodlines, and the reckoning that would decide the fate of humanity. Eli stumbled through the narrow passageway, his mind racing with the chaos of images and voices. The walls seemed to press in on him, narrowing with each step. He could hear his own breath, ragged and shallow, but the air around him was still suffocating. It felt like the temple itself was watching him, judging him. The whispers were louder now, more urgent. They spoke of betrayal, of an ancient war, of half-bloods and forgotten alliances. Each step forward seemed to pull him deeper into the mystery, deeper into a story that wasn't his, but that he was somehow tied to. He rounded a corner, and the passage opened into a small chamber, dimly lit by glowing stones set into the walls. The air was colder here, a stark contrast to the desert heat outside. The ground was covered in a thin layer of dust, and in the center of the room a stone altar stood, its surface worn smooth by time. But it wasn't the altar that caught Eli's attention. It was the figure standing beside it. A girl. A young alien girl dressed in a tattered dust cloak. Her face was partially hidden, her long hair falling over her eyes, but Eli could see enough to know she was different. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, with faint patterns running across it like tattoos or markings from an ancient ritual. Eli froze, his heart hammering in his chest. Was she real? Was she part of the trial? Or was she another illusion like the shadows he'd seen before? The girl didn't move at first. She stood there, her eyes closed, her hands clasped in front of her as if waiting for something. Her presence felt strange, like she was both part of this place and yet out of time, as if she didn't belong here. Eli hesitated. He had learned by now not to trust his instincts in this place, but something about the girl, something in the quiet stillness of her presence, felt different. "Who are you?" Eli called out, his voice echoing in the stillness of the room. His throat was dry, but the words came out stronger than he expected. The girl didn't respond right away. For a moment, she remained silent, as if considering his question. Finally, she opened her eyes, revealing a pair of pale, almost silver irises that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Her gaze locked onto Eli, and for a second he felt like she was looking right through him. "I am sorry," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange weight. "You are the one who drank from the helmet." Eli's stomach twisted. What are you doing here?" Sahri didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer to him, her movement slow and deliberate. "I was sent," she said, her voice quiet, yet full of authority. "You are not the first human to walk these halls, but you may be the last." Eli frowned. "What do you mean?" Sahri stopped in front of the altar and motioned for Eli to come closer. Hesitant, he took a step forward, his mind racing. "The trial is not only for you," she said, her voice taking on a somber tone. "It is for all of humanity. The blood that runs through your veins is not just human. It is half of something else. The warrior's blood." Eli felt a chill run down his spine. "What does that have to do with me?" "Everything," Sahri replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "The blood that flows in your body is the same as Lorcai's, the warrior you saw in the temple. His legacy, his war, runs through you. You are a part of this story now. The reckoning has already begun, and only the chosen can survive." Eli's mind spun as he tried to process her words. He couldn't understand. He wasn't a warrior, not like Lorcai. He was just a man, a human with nothing special about him. But Sari's words had struck a nerve. She spoke as if his very existence was tied to the fate of this place. "Why me?" Eli asked, his voice shaking with confusion. "Why was I chosen?" Sahri's expression softened and she reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was cold, but it felt strangely comforting. "You were chosen because you are the bridge," she said quietly. "The bridge between your kind and the forgotten clans. Your actions, your choices will determine the future of both." Eli swallowed hard, his mind racing. "What happens if I fail?" "If I can't complete this trial?" Sari's gaze darkened. "Failure means destruction. Not just for you, but for all of humanity. The reckoning will come, and the war that was once fought will rise again." A cold silence filled the room. Eli's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just a test. It was a war that had been forgotten, buried in time, but one that had now come back to claim its victory. Sari turned away from him, her eyes scanning the altar. "There is one last trial," she said, her voice steady. "But you must be ready. Only when you are truly ready will you be able to face the reckoning." Eli stood frozen, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what this trial meant or what he was supposed to do. But he knew one thing for certain. He had no choice but to continue. The path ahead was uncertain, but the future of humanity rested in his hands. Sahri's voice broke through his thoughts. "Come, the trial awaits." With no more words, she stepped back into the shadows, disappearing into the darkness of the temple. Eli took a deep breath and followed her, the weight of his destiny pressing on his shoulders. Eli followed Sari through the dark corridors of the temple, his every step heavy with the knowledge that he was no longer just a wanderer in this strange world. He had become a part of its story, its trial, and he could feel the weight of it in his bones. The shadows clung to him like a second skin, and the further they went, the more the air seemed to grow thick, almost suffocating. The passage ahead narrowed, the walls closing in on them. The quiet hum of the temple's ancient energy surrounded him, but something else was lurking in the silence, something watching him, waiting. He couldn't shake the feeling that the temple itself was alive, its breath slow and measured as if it were breathing with him. Sari walked in front, her cloak billowing around her as she moved through the gloom, her footsteps soundless on the stone floor. She didn't seem to notice the heavy atmosphere or the strange presence that filled the air. Eli couldn't tell if she was simply accustomed to it, or if she was hiding something deeper, something he wasn't meant to know. He had so many questions about Lorkai, the half-bloods and the reckoning, but he didn't dare speak. The silence between them felt sacred, as though anything spoken aloud would break the fragile veil that separated him from the truth. Every time he tried to form a question, the words stuck in his throat. They reached a massive chamber. The door was massive, framed by two towering statues, warriors frozen in time, their expressions grim and fierce. The door itself was made of polished obsidian, its surface smooth and dark, reflecting nothing but the shadows that seemed to gather around it. "This is where it begins," Sari said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Inside, the reckoning will unfold. But be prepared, Eli. Time is no longer what it seems here." Eli hesitated, a chill creeping down his spine. Time. The word echoed in his mind. He had already felt time stretch and bend in this place, as though reality was being twisted. Every step he took felt like a journey through layers of time, slipping between moments like pages in a book. But this felt different. The door creaked open as if moved by an unseen hand. Beyond it lay a vast expanse, an open field, but the ground was unlike anything Eli had seen before. It was shifting, moving, rippling like water. The sky above was dark, swirling with clouds that seemed to pulse and breathe, their movements slow and deliberate. In the distance, Eli saw figures, beasts. They moved with grace and power, their forms distorted, stretching and bending in unnatural ways. Time was flowing differently here. The creatures appeared to be caught in moments of transformation, like snapshots of an eternal struggle. Some were monstrous, others small and fragile, flickering in and out of existence as if they were trapped between moments. Sari stepped forward, her cloak trailing behind her. She moved with a quiet purpose, as if she had walked this path before. "They are the time beasts," she said, not looking back at Eli. "Creatures born of the conflict between time and memory. They are not alive, not dead. They are the result of 1,000 forgotten battles, the echoes of those who failed the reckoning." Eli stepped closer, his heart racing. The beasts were unsettling, their movements fluid and alien. Their bodies rippled like liquid, distorting and warping with each step they took. It was as though they were fighting themselves, fighting time itself, forever trapped in an endless cycle. "What are they?" Eli asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Shadows of the past," Sari replied, her voice soft. "They are what happens when the trial is failed. Those who lose their way, who cannot accept the reckoning, become trapped in time. These creatures are what remains." Eli's stomach turned. He couldn't look away from the beasts, but he had to. The more he stared, the more it felt like they were looking back at him. It was as if they were aware of his presence, aware of his every thought. "The reckoning is not just a test of strength," Sari continued. "It is a test of time itself. The trial will bend your mind, pull at your memories, your regrets. Only those who can let go of the past will survive." Eli's heart raced. "I don't understand," he said, his voice shaking. "What do I have to do?" Sari turned to him, her silver eyes locking onto his. "You must face the echoes of your own past," she said quietly. "The memories you have buried, the guilt you carry. Only by confronting them will you be able to move forward." Eli felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He didn't want to face his past. The memories were too painful. The faces he had lost. The mistakes he had made. How could he confront that? Before he could speak, a massive shape loomed before him. A time beast, its form flickering and warping as it moved. It was massive, towering over him. Its eyes were empty, voids of darkness. It stared at Eli, and in its gaze he saw a flash, a memory. It was a face. A face he knew all too well. His brother. The memory hit him like a wave, crashing over him. He saw his brother's face, young and full of life, laughing as they played together. But the image shifted. His brother's face changed, became twisted with pain and regret. Then the memory was gone, replaced by another. A mistake Eli had made long ago. A moment of failure. A moment he had never forgiven himself for. The time beast roared, a sound that shook the air and lunged at him. Eli stumbled backward, his heart pounding, but Sari was already moving. She raised her hand and the beast froze in place, its form flickering. "You must face it, Eli," she said softly. "Face the past or be trapped by it forever." Eli nodded, swallowing hard. He stepped forward, his heart heavy, knowing that to survive this trial he would have to confront the truth of who he was. The reckoning was here. The air in the chamber was thick with tension, and Eli could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him. His breath was shallow, and his heart pounded in his chest as he faced the time beast. The creature had frozen in place, its massive form flickering and twisting, its eyes like endless black voids. But the beast wasn't the only thing in this chamber. The memories were still there, floating around him like smoke, haunting him. Sari stood beside him, her eyes steady as she watched the creature. She didn't seem afraid. She didn't seem anything, really, just calm, like this was all a part of some greater plan. But Eli was not calm. His hands were shaking, his thoughts racing. How could he face what was ahead? How could he defeat something that wasn't even alive? You must confront it, Sari said, her voice low and firm. The past cannot be escaped, Eli. It will find you, and if you do not face it, you will become like the others, lost in time forever. Eli swallowed, his throat dry. His eyes were drawn to the beast, to its empty gaze. For a moment he saw his brother's face again. His younger brother, Evan. His memory was like a sharp stab in his heart. The way Evan had smiled at him, the way they had laughed together. And then, the final moment, the moment Eli had never forgiven himself for the accident. The day Evan died. Eli had been there, but he hadn't done enough. He hadn't been fast enough. And now his brother was gone. The time beast's form shimmered, its mouth opening in a silent snarl. Eli's body trembled as he took a step forward, his mind refusing to let go of the memory. Sari's voice broke through the fog of his thoughts. Do not let it control you. Confront it now. Eli nodded, though his chest felt heavy. He had always tried to bury that memory, to push it down. But here, in this strange place, the memory had resurfaced, raw, painful, and unrelenting. He stepped closer to the beast. As he did, the air around him seemed to ripple. The walls of the chamber began to fade, and suddenly he was back in his childhood home. He saw the living room, old, familiar, full of sunlight. He could hear the laughter of his younger self and Evan. Eli, catch! He turned around, and there was Evan, tossing him a football. It was the same game they had played every summer, but this time, something felt different. The memory shifted like a broken film reel. Now they were at the lake. Evan had insisted on going swimming, despite the warning signs. It had been raining heavily that day. The water was cold, the current strong. Eli's stomach clenched as he saw the moment play out in front of him. Evan panicking, struggling against the current, his hands reaching for Eli. Help me, Evan had screamed, his voice full of terror. But Eli hadn't reached him in time. The current had pulled Evan under, and he had never come back up. The memory shattered, and Eli was standing again in the chamber, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The time beast was still there, but now it wasn't just a creature. It was his guilt. His failure. Sari's voice was firm but gentle. You are not the one to blame for the past, Eli. What happened to Evan, what happened to so many before you, was not your fault. But if you cannot forgive yourself, you will be trapped forever. Eli's eyes blurred with tears, but he didn't let them fall. He had to fight. He had to push forward for his brother, for himself, for humanity. I can't forget. Eli whispered, his voice cracking. I can't undo what happened. No one can, Sari replied softly. But you can choose to move forward. You can choose to let go of the past, or it will consume you. The time beast lunged forward, its massive jaws snapping, but this time, Eli didn't flinch. He stood tall, his body trembling with a mix of fear and determination. The memories that had plagued him for so long still stung, but now they were only part of him, not all of him. You are not my guilt, Eli said, his voice steadying. You are not my past. As the words left his mouth, the time beast froze again, its form flickering. The chamber seemed to pulse with energy. The walls, the memories, the echoes of time itself began to fade, leaving behind only the quiet hum of the temple's power. Eli felt the weight on his chest lift, just a little. The trial wasn't over, not by a long shot, but something had changed. The beast, the memory, the guilt, they were all part of the reckoning, but they no longer controlled him. Sari stepped forward, her silver eyes watching him intently. You have taken the first step, she said, her voice filled with approval. The reckoning is not just a trial of strength, Eli. It is a trial of the soul. You must learn to release what holds you back. Eli nodded slowly, the truth settling deep within him. I can't change the past, he said, his voice stronger now. But I can choose to live. Sari smiled faintly, a rare glimpse of warmth in her eyes. That is the key, Eli. To survive, you must let go. The past is not yours to carry forever. You must learn to move forward. The time beast, once a looming figure of terror, had now become nothing more than a flickering shadow. It faded into the air, leaving Eli standing alone in the chamber, the weight of the trial beginning to shift. He took a deep breath, his body still trembling, but his heart lighter than it had been in years. The path ahead would not be easy, but he was ready to face whatever came next, and, perhaps for the first time in his life, Eli Morgan was free. The silence in the chamber was heavy, but Eli felt something new in the air, a strange, peaceful stillness. The time beast had vanished. The memories of his past, though not forgotten, no longer weighed him down. The trial was far from over, but something had shifted inside him, and it was as if a part of the temple itself had recognized it. Sari stood a few paces away, her expression unreadable as she watched Eli. The ancient walls of the temple hummed with an energy that seemed to echo every thought in his mind. Every step he had taken in this trial had brought him closer to understanding something deeper than the reckoning, something about who he truly was. "You've faced your past?" "Eli," Sari said softly, her voice like a breath of wind in the quiet. "But now you must face the future." Eli turned to her, his chest tightening at her words. The future? He had never considered that. All this time, he had been running from the mistakes of the past, trying to survive the trial. But what came after the reckoning? What came after you let go of everything that had shaped you? He swallowed hard, his throat dry. What does that mean? Sari's silver eyes met his, and for the first time he saw a hint of emotion, of something almost like compassion. The future, Eli, is not a place to run from. It is a place to shape. You were chosen for this trial not to fight the past, but to determine the path forward for your kind. The words hit him like a wave. He had been running, trying to survive, trying to escape. But the trial wasn't just about him. It was about all of humanity. His choices, his survival, would shape the future of his people. The room seemed to shift again, the air growing colder, the stone beneath his feet vibrating. The door at the far end of the chamber began to creak open, revealing a faint light spilling through the cracks. Eli felt a pull, an almost magnetic force drawing him toward it. Sari stepped back, motioning for him to go ahead. This is the final step, Eli. Beyond this door lies the heart of the reckoning. You have passed the trials of time, but the final judgment awaits. Eli took a deep breath, his mind swirling. He didn't know what lay beyond that door, but he knew one thing. He was no longer the man who had entered this temple. He had let go of the guilt. He had faced the darkest parts of his past. And now it was time to step into the unknown. He stepped forward, his boots clicking against the stone floor. The door creaked wider, revealing a vast expanse beyond it. The light was brighter now, almost blinding, but as his eyes adjusted, he saw that it wasn't light at all. It was a vast, swirling energy like a storm of stars, a galaxy of possibility. He stepped into the light. The moment he crossed the threshold, the world around him seemed to fall away. The temple, Sari, the beasts, they all vanished, replaced by a vast void filled with swirling colors, light, and endless space. He felt weightless, as though he was no longer bound by time or place. It was both terrifying and exhilarating at once. The voice he had heard before, the one that had spoken from the helmet, echoed in his mind again. The trial is not just for you, it is for all of humanity. Eli looked around, feeling small and insignificant against the vastness of the space. But in that smallness he felt something else, a sense of connection, a sense of belonging to something much greater than himself. The echoes of the warrior, of the forgotten clans of his own bloodline, they were all here, a part of this cosmic reckoning. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the center of the void. It was not a man, not a woman, more like a presence, a being of light and shadow. It moved with grace, its form shifting and flowing as if it was both everywhere and nowhere at once. You have passed the trial, the being said, its voice both thunderous and soft. But passing the trial is not enough. You must choose. You must choose the future of your kind. Eli's heart beat faster as the words sank in. Choose? What did that mean? He had survived the trial, faced the darkness of his past. But what was his responsibility now? The being gestured, and suddenly a vision appeared before Eli. It was Earth, but not the Earth he knew. This Earth was darkened, the sky red with fire. Cities were in ruins, and human figures moved through the wreckage, their faces hollow with despair. Eli's stomach turned as he watched the vision unfold. He saw humans fighting, killing each other. He saw the broken remnants of an ancient war, one that had never truly ended. The future of his people was a wasteland, a world where hope had died. The vision shifted, and suddenly he saw another future. A different Earth, bright, full of life, with humans working alongside the forgotten clans. Alien technology mixed with human innovation, creating a future of peace and understanding. Choose, the being said again. You, Eli Morgan, have the power to shape this future. The reckoning was never about the past, it was about the future. Humanity must decide whether it will rise or fall, whether it will continue down the path of destruction or embrace a new dawn. Eli's heart pounded in his chest as the vision swirled around him. He had the power to choose. He had the power to shape the future. But the weight of that responsibility was enormous. It wasn't just about him, it was about every single person on Earth. He closed his eyes, and in that moment of silence, something inside him clicked. The answer was clear. The future wasn't about running from the past. It wasn't about living in fear. It was about growth, about building something better, about learning from mistakes and creating a new world, one where humans could coexist with the alien races, where humanity could rise above its old conflicts and embrace its true potential. He opened his eyes and spoke the words he knew were right. "I choose peace," he said, his voice strong. "I choose a future where humanity rises not through war but through unity." The being nodded, its form glowing brighter. "Then it is done." Eli felt a rush of energy surge through him, a wave of warmth and light. The void began to fade, and the world around him shifted once more. He was back in the temple, standing before Sari, who smiled at him. "You chose well, Eli," she said softly. "The reckoning is over." Eli looked around, feeling the weight of his choice. He had passed the trial. He had chosen humanity's future, and for the first time he felt truly free.